Hello, I'm Joan Dosso at Emmanuel Baptist Church in Victoria, and I'm here today with Amanda Ross and Ken Badley, who are in Calgary. And we're going to talk to you about an upcoming project that we're doing at Emmanuel on our Sunday morning services. Ken and Amanda have been working on a book, and it's about the changing culture and our church's response. And we thought the board and the pastors were talking about what should we be doing with our preaching times during these Sunday morning services online. And we wanted to involve congregational conversations to get people talking to each other about who we are as a church at Emmanuel. And we thought that working with the material from this book and from Ken and Amanda, who've done an awful lot of thinking about who the church should be in the world, that this would be a good way to get these conversations going. And so they'll be speaking to us starting on June 17th for 5 weeks, and we'll be having discussion groups after, and I'll give you a little more information about the structure later. But let's get to know our people a little bit now. Amanda, can you tell us something about who you are and what you're doing?
Well, I am currently a student at Ambrose University, finishing up my Master of Divinity degree. And that is actually where I met Ken, because his wife, Joanne, is the academic dean there. While being a student takes up most of my time these days, I have done quite a lot of ministry, church ministry in the past, most recently at my home church as the head of the worship ministry.
Great. And Ken, can you tell us about yourself?
I've been a school teacher or a university professor or a Bible college professor my entire career, and most recently retired from Mount Royal University here in Calgary, where I was teaching in the education program, and actually am still teaching at Tyndale University in Toronto in their education program. My wife and I actually spent 8 years in Washington State and visited your church one Sunday, maybe 6 or 7 or 8 years ago, Saturday and Sunday. And I don't know if you know, but Joanne preached at Joan's ordination. Some of you may remember her, the one who also preached on May 17th and will preach later this morning for you in your church. So part of my time now is in mentoring teachers who have just graduated, and I give quite a bit of my time to writing on education and on the book that Amanda and I are working on right now. So I'm happy to be with you folks for these weeks, and it's new for me. I think it's new for Amanda to try to do work related to Sunday morning services online, but we're going to do our best, and we're glad to be with you.
Thank you. Can you tell us a little bit about your impetus for writing this book?
Yeah, 2 years ago, I was asked to speak at a conference of European Christian educators in Bulgaria. I was told to prepare for 2 90-minute sessions, one called In This Cultural Moment, What Should Christians Be? And one called Christian Educators in Public Settings. And I decided on this one about the cultural moment, that if I was going to speak for 90 minutes, I was going to speak from a manuscript and try to make it into a book project later. So upon getting back to Canada, Tyndale, the University in Toronto, and the Canadian Bible Society were launching a new imprint called Tyndale Academic Press for the Canadian Church. They wanted Canadian authors, and I proposed this project based on what I had done in Bulgaria to them, and it was accepted. Some months after I began working on it, Joanne said to me one morning, my wife said to me one morning on her way to work, I have this brilliant student in the seminary, and she's a pastor, and you need to have her in this project because you cannot do this by yourself. And I took her advice, and Amanda agreed. So that's sort of where the book came from. Most recently, COVID-19 has actually sharpened the questions I ask. And I think Amanda asks about the time we live in. Are we going to be different? Yes, we are when this is over. Are we going to be better people when this is over? And so we think the book is timely. We're not glad for the pandemic, but we want to try to speak a Christian word into it at this time.
Thank you. Amanda, tell us about your impetus for being involved with this book.
Well, Ken's invitation to join him was intriguing to me because of the questions that I'd already been asking myself as to how today's church can answer or might respond to today's questions. Because even in my lifetime my world has changed, and things that were assumed to be normal when I was a child simply aren't normal anymore. And I think that's a very small window of time that I've been alive, compared to the history of humanity, but so much has been changing. And I have asked myself, where are we now? And what is the Christian voice in all of this? And where are those enduring foundations we can build on? Because we believe that's what happens in our Christian faith. And in these scriptures, there are foundations that endure no matter what is changing in our world. So what do those things have to say to today's questions? So for me, this book is less about giving answers and more about inviting people and myself into this exploration, what the Bible has to say to the kinds of questions and the things, the concerns we have in today's world.
And can you say what you hope that Emmanuel will take from this project?
I hope that we will all together become far more curious about our own selves and about this world that we live in. That we would be, brave to be able to ask ourselves questions about, what really are the most important things in my life? What are those things that are worth spending my time on? And what are those things that I've anchored my security in? Is it my job? Is it my family? And are those anchor points really as secure as I need them to be? And that we would together explore, what does it mean to live as God's people in this changing world? So that's what I'm hoping for.
And Ken, what are you hoping for that Emmanuel will take from this?
Well, one thing we hope to offer is ways to think about the culture that we live in and ways to understand the kinds of changes that we find ourselves in the middle of. And part of that, I think, is to find sort of scriptural possibilities for postures toward the world, toward our neighbor, and toward even that I think of the people of Victoria, British Columbia. And certainly when I think about my own church here in Calgary, or Emmanuel in Victoria, I think, how do we respond to what's around us? And how do we, especially in COVID-19 time, how do we respond or look into the future with confidence and with hope rather than with apprehension? And so I hope that, and we hope that out of our work, our 5 weeks with you, that we're able to discover ourselves what some of these things are, but also to help you find ways forward in this time in which, frankly, I'm not as afraid right now as I am bored. And I'm wondering, how can we find ways to move ahead, to be people who bless the people around us by the ways we live? So that's our hope, that we would be able to, in a sense, bless Emmanuel, but bless Canada as well with the book and with our weeks with you.
Thank you. And you've told me that the book is not finished. It will be finished hopefully at the end of August. And
yes,
that perhaps feedback you get from us as a congregation might just influence it a little bit. Is that correct?
Yes, exactly. And Amanda's hope and my own is that your church will buy 10,000 copies so we can eat at Denny's once.
Okay.
That might be Ken's hope in particular, but.
Right. Okay. Well, thank you so much for being with us today. For you at Emmanuel, we hope that you join us starting on June 14th. Will be the beginning of this series, and they'll speak to us on Sunday mornings during our normal worship time. We're going to have either Zoom or socially distanced groups to discuss these things each week after the service. And if you would like to join one of these groups, please contact any of the pastors. You can find our website and then find our email addresses on the website. There'll be more information coming about these groups as we get organized, but they'll be led by the pastors and by some of our lay people. Our Mandarin congregation will be joining us for all of these sessions, and will have their own Zoom groups for discussion. So we really hope that you can get on board with us, and please call us or email us if you have any questions about it. Thank you very much.